Welcome to the Fitness Devil episode, I think it's 65. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we got a special guest today. We got Bret Contreras. He's better known as the Glute Guy on Instagram. He's got a huge following. He's also the owner of the Glute Lab. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to bring him on, was not just to talk about glutes. He's a PhD in exercise science. He knows a lot about movement and lifting and glutes. But as a business owner, you would assume that things are really easy for a guy with that much popularity and that big of a following. And that's not necessarily the case. And Bret goes into great detail about the hardships of opening up a business in a place like San Diego. But I think there's a lot of information that is very relevant to a lot of our listeners. Another thing that we really talk about and hammer home is this idea of language in our training and how as coaches we can really impact the success or the hardships endured by our clients just by the use of language, and just making sure that people understand that they aren't broken and using language that surrounds that idea. And he basically has a really good talk about this, and he's done it a few times, but he goes into pretty good detail in this podcast, and I think it's something you should stick around for. So if you're one of Bret's listeners, you know what? Subscribe, rate us. If you're one of our listeners, share it. But enjoy. This one's really, really good.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today we got Bret Contreras. Been working on getting Bret on for a while, matched up with his schedule. And if you haven't heard of the Glute Guy, as he's better known, he's got a PhD in sports science and contributes heavily to the body of research, not just on glutes, but exercise physiology in general in our industry. He created the hip thruster, owns his gym, the Glute Lab in San Diego, travels to speak at conferences. I've seen him twice in person myself, and he's written for more fitness publications than I can probably list off here. So you've completely rewritten how we understand and train glutes. So Bret, it's a real honor to bring you on here. So what have you been up to recently?
So last year, first off, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Last year, I'm 42 years old. When I was 41, I decided to move out to San Diego. So I'd lived in Phoenix for my whole life, and then moved to San Diego. I got so sick of the heat. And the older I got, the harder it was to deal with this summer heat. So San Diego's been so nice because it's so much cooler. The weather's amazing here. But I built a gym out here. It's podcasting from Glute Lab. I've hired several employees, and it's been just a lot different. Like, my life in Phoenix was very easy. I trained people out of my garage gym. I think I had hired an assistant like a year before I left, but she worked a couple hours a day for me. And now I have like 6 employees, a gym, and then I've expanded my businesses a lot. So got a lot of money going around. It's like sometimes I'm like, whoa, look at my bank account. And then I've had days where I had, 12 checks I had to write and $120,000 worth of bills in one day. And you're like, it's crazy. Yeah. So definitely a lot crazier now. It's a lot different. It's having employees is very rewarding. I'm never been a boss before. And so, I'm responsible for people's livelihood. And I look at them like, I don't have kids, so I can try to educate them and bring them up and help them become the best that they can be. But it's just very different. My life is so much different than it was a year ago, and I'm juggling a lot more things.
You don't have kids, but you got Spencer. So you get to hang out with Spencer all the time. Spencer Nadolski, because he's been on our podcast twice. So you're hanging out there with Sophie all the time. So he's been on the podcast. And Sam Spinelli ducks in there sometimes. So he's a buddy of ours.
Your whole crew, man. We got your whole crew.
Yeah. So it's really fun.
Spencer's moved out here just a few months ago, and yeah, it's great. He's always looking for a taco partner. Yeah, he's crazy about his tacos.
Well, let's actually, the one thing we did want to touch on, and you got to it a little bit, but I don't know if it was on your Facebook or an article, but basically how your gym turned out to be super fucking expensive, way more than you thought. And basically you pushed through and were successful. And I think one of the things you talked about was like the hard work and the hours you put in, the sacrifices you made, but work ethic got you through. So the one thing we have a bunch of fit pros and people listening that want to get something out of it. What did you learn about yourself through this experience, and what advice would you share with young professionals who aren't putting in the time and effort, but expect those big things to happen so quickly?
Oh, this is a great question. So, and I've been in this situation a few times in my life, and I can tell you there's no stress like financial stress where you're wondering if you're going to go bankrupt. And you're like, great, I have $5,000 in my account, and somehow I have to come up with $65,000 by the end of the month. And so when I moved out here, I wasn't necessarily going to start a gym. My house has a studio in it, it's like 750 square feet, and I thought, I could just have that be my studio. Yep. But I'm so obsessed with equipment that I was like, if I find a good gym, then I'll do that. There's a couple powerlifting gyms out here. There's a bunch of commercial gyms, but I went to every one of them, and just for one reason or another, I didn't like any of the gyms. Ironically, a Crunch opened up like just a few doors down from Glute Lab, and I like it, but it wasn't there when I made the decision to start up Glute Lab. But I like just nice, clean places that are open, nice lighting, and then the people, the people who attend the gym matter and how crowded it is and everything. And I realized when I first moved here, you can see on my Instagram, I was like shoulder tapping people. Hey, could you film this set? And they're like, and you never know how they're going to film it, if they're going to know what they're doing, if they're going to get half of your body and the rest be the ceiling or so. And it's awkward too, especially if you're doing like a hip thrust. You don't want to be like, hey, dude. So I'm like, God, this is actually not good for my business. I need to have my own gym. So in Phoenix, I got lucky. Just so much different here in California, and I'm pretty sure it's California. But like when I opened my gym in Phoenix, it was smooth sailing. Everything, I didn't deal with any hiccups. I remember signing the lease. I got the business license. I got everything like all within the same time period. Opened up shop. No hiccups at all. It was the easiest process. So I completely underestimated here when I signed the lease. My landlord failed 3 inspections, and it was his fault, but I can't open up. Yeah. So finally I went and said, this is on you, not me. But what do you want to do? Start off your business relationship with your landlord with a lawsuit? So I lost it. But here's the other thing. I had told my trainers, quit your jobs and come work for me.
Shit.
I promised them I'd be paying them, so we can't open. I'm not just losing out on the lease payment. I'm losing out on the money that I'm paying them. Now they're helping me, but they're trainers. Yeah. So we had some growing pains to so I'm trying to have them help me with my different online businesses, and that's not their complete skill set at that time. So it's just a waste of space, because we have this space here not being used, and it was a waste of resources and a big waste of money. And I got down to like $5,000 in my bank account, and I remember being so stressed out. So, but what's the saying? Drastic means call for drastic measures or whatever. So that's when I thought up a couple new business streams, and those panned out, and eventually my gym opened. We got members in here. The gym actually doesn't make me a lot of money. It's my other revenue streams that make me a lot of money, my online stuff. But now I'm doing really well. But what I will tell you is, in California, it's they don't think of the business owners and the entrepreneurs. It's all the things out here. Like, you'd fail an inspection, they'd say, here's 3 things you have to fix. You fix those 3 things, then you get a new inspector who comes in and goes, okay, here's 3 new things. And then you're like, why can't I get the same inspector to sign off on it? It's like a racketeering job out here with the things they do. I just got something in the mail the other day that said, you owe $5,000, but it's $4,000 and a $1,000 fine. And I'm like, what is this? From some employee development department or something. So I asked my accountant, and she's like, you know what, Brett, you don't owe any money. I called him up. I don't even know where they came up with this figure. It's just, I don't know. I don't know why the people out here deal with it.
Jesus. What was I going to say? If for anyone who doesn't actually follow your Instagram feed, it's actually really funny because they'll show all kinds of the people that come in there, tag in there. It's really cool. Lots of exercises. But there's always, every day, there's like just you just staring at the screen. And it has like the movie that's on the background. You list off, you're watching a movie, whatever soundtrack you're listening to, and then all the exercises you did. So, guys, this shit's really entertaining. So, and of course, there's usually like pointing out the gray chest hair too, which you're covering up today in the shirt. So
I don't know when I started doing that. I actually can't remember, but when I got this gym, I wanted to have 3 TVs, and I have 3 TVs in here, and I'll have 3 different movies on, or like a game, a news station, or a movie, but I play music during my workout, so I'm not like watching the movie, but it's usually a movie I've seen before. I just love. In fact, when I train now, I'm at another gym, I miss having the TVs there. It's just I love having the gym to myself, the 3 movies, playing whatever music I want, and then free reign of all the equipment. That's what's so hard when I go to. I just went to Crunch the other day to use their cable column. I have a cable column here, but I like theirs more for like cable crossovers. So I did like bench press and incline press here. Ran down to Crunch to finish off some cable crossovers, and I'm waiting, and about 10 minutes goes by, and I'm just waiting there politely, and this guy, he's pissed off that I'm waiting for the equipment. So he's like, "Can I help you?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm just waiting for the equipment." And he's like, "Well, I'm using it." And I'm like, "He's been there for 10 minutes already." So I go, "How many more sets do you have?" And he's like, "I don't know." And I go, "Oh, like, is it 3 sets, 6 sets, 10 sets?" He goes, "I don't know. I train to fatigue." Like, what does that even mean? Train to fatigue on 1,000,000 sets? Train till you can't pick yourself up off the floor? So I was so annoyed. I go, "Look, this is the way it works. You're supposed to be following an actual program that was predetermined. You're supposed to know how many sets you're going to do. It's usually like 3 or 4. It's never 10. And when you see somebody waiting for the equipment, you try to hurry or say, 'Do you want to work in?'" And it annoys the hell out of me because I've been training in gyms since I was 15 years old. So for 27 years, I've been training at commercial gyms. And there was just this code that we had back in the day. When I was 15, we had a code. You worked in with each other. You tried to hurry. Someone was waiting. You'd be like, "Hey, dude, I got 3 sets. I'll try to hurry." You were cognizant about, you were empathetic about this person's waiting. I'm interfering with their workout. And you never took up 2 or 3 pieces of equipment. Nowadays, you'll be at gyms and you'll go to use them. They'll be like, "I'm using that." And then they're using something else. And you're like, "Well, using this or that." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm supersetting," or "I'm doing a tricep." And I'm like, "What?" I want to go, "Actually, I'm using everything right now. I'm doing a monster set with every piece of equipment at gym."
Did they have movies back in the day? Or is that a you thing?
On movies on
in the old school gyms, it had to have happened somewhere.
Gyms for nearly 20 years, so no, they never had movies on. I don't think. Brett, you ever seen that?
So that's a Bret thing.
No, that's a Bret thing.
That's a Bret thing.
I'm almost at a point where I can't train at commercial gyms because it's so frustrating to me, the lack of knowledge of gym etiquette. I made this post years ago on my blog, the 50 Commandments of Commercial Gym Etiquette, but people just don't. It boils down to common sense, but just people don't have much of that anymore.
Where do you think that was lost? Because I agree, but it wasn't always like that. Even when I was younger, where did we go wrong?
I just think it's the mindset of the newer generation. There's a lot of pros with the way their mindsets are, and a lot of cons with it too. But there's a lot of entitled prima donnas out there, and also I don't know, gym memberships have become a lot more common, and it attracts less serious people that don't understand that we should all be cooperating, and it's not all about you. It's about, let's all work together to make this a good experience. But I don't have double standards. You'll never see me at a commercial gym hogging a piece of equipment for 40 minutes. I try and get in and get out, and if I see someone waiting, I'm like,
"Yeah, work in."
Yeah, work in, and they'll be like, "No, you're using a lot more weight than me." And I'm like, "I'll take the weight off. It won't be a problem. How much do you want?"
Yeah.
I guess like you don't see things like Arnold and all his buddies working out together, the old school bodybuilders. And one of the questions I really wanted to get your thoughts on is, obviously we're living in a different world at a different time, and a lot of industries are being disrupted. I always think of Uber and taxis, or Apple, iTunes, and the music industry. And like, your work on glutes disrupted a lot of the established training ideas in the bodybuilding community that were around for a really long time. You challenged a lot of firmly entrenched beliefs, and you got a lot of pushback from that. How did you push through that resistance and criticism to show the industry a better way to train? How'd you handle that?
Oh my God, Andrew, you don't know the half of it. Like, you'll never meet anyone as passionate about me, probably about strength training in general, but especially about like my methods with glute training. And I think most people would have given up along the way after they saw, I read every single article on T Nation from 1998 to like when I wrote my first article in 2009. I had so much reverence for all these guys who helped me become a better coach and who taught me things. I remember going to a Perform Better seminar, and I met a bunch of the guys, and I was like trying to teach them about the hip thrust. And one guy's like, you don't turn an activation exercise into a strength exercise. And I'm like, well, I measured the activation of doing body weight, doing 135 pounds, 225, 315. Your activation keeps going up. So if you want to talk activation, and then I talked to half the guys there, and they were instantly dismissive of my methods, having never even tried it. And I realized half of these guys aren't even serious lifters. Like, if you're a serious lifter, I don't care who you are. Andrew, if you're like, dude, I got this new thing I've been doing for my biceps, that's how I learn. I'm like, what is it? I want to know. Tell me, and I'll go try it. Like, you can't. How many exercises did you think would suck and they're awesome, or vice versa? How many times have you? Hell, the first time I tried single leg RDLs, I hated them. I had to get good at them. I liked them. Pistol squats, I couldn't do one. I had to work at it. Like, you have to exercise, do it. I might have tried hip thrust along the way and loaded up to. I start out with 185 pounds and worked my way up gradually, always making sure to feel it in my glutes. You see some of these guys, they'll look at a guy like me and go, oh, if he can do this, so can I. I'm going to load up 500 pounds, try it for the first time. Their chest comes up, they're hyperextending, not locking out, and conclude that it's a bad exercise. And that would be the same thing as if you put 500 pounds on the bar for deadlifts and round backed it on the way up and concluded it's bad for your back. They're not, a lot of these guys, they're not aficionados of strength training. They're not connoisseurs. They're not
good at it.
I learned, first of all, half of these guys I looked up to, they're jokes. They're not even serious lifters. They're not serious about they're more about the appearance. And that was what the most eye-opening thing for me. I thought when I start out, it would be just, I'm going to present this to the world. People are going to do it. They're going to feel it working their glutes. They're going to love it. I'm going to point out the EMG evidence, and they're going to go, wow, this is a great lift. We're going to incorporate it. And almost every popular male in the industry bashed it, having never tried it. And I was doing it with all my clients, and they loved it. And my clients were saying, I feel this in the glutes more than any other exercise. And they're saying my gains, my glutes are growing far more than when I used before I ever did these. And then I have these so-called experts bashing the methods and talking down about them, and I knew they'd never even tried them. So I would read all these criticisms of it, how dangerous it is, and it's so funny because I need to post this. I made a video. The reason why I don't post it is it makes me squeamish. So I have this video, and it's like, so you got these guys out there saying that hip thrusts are dangerous, and Andrew and Dean, I've been training people with the hip thrust since 2006. So 12 full years, and I haven't had a single injury. Not one injury. That's insane. And we're at Glute Lab here. We have 6 different hip thrust stations. I got Booty Builder right there, Glute Builder, Hip Thruster, Smith Machine, Glute Drive, Scorcher. And we don't give people just hip thrusts. They do 6 types of hip thrusts here. They actually probably do 15 types of hip thrusts here. Not a single injury from anyone here at Glute Lab. My gym has had 0 injuries in 10 months of being in business. which is crazy. I mean, we've had probably 1,000 people in here and no injuries. And so, and they will all tell you the hip thrust is the safest lift when you do it correctly.
Yeah.
So I have this video I made where it's like, you be the judge. I'm like, okay, you be the judge. I'm going to show you some videos. You be the judge. Here's what happens when you go a little too heavy on squats. And it's like, you know, you've seen the videos of like Ed Cohn just knee caving in, falls down to the ground, he just tears his knee. There's like 5 squat videos, and then deadlift videos where people are pulling their hamstring or tearing their, you can see the biceps tendon scroll up in the video, you know? And then there's like 5 bench press videos, but in the one video, the guy actually died. He lifts the bar, bounces off his chest, and that guy actually died. And one where the guy goes to rack it, and then it's like, you know, across his neck, strangling him, and he's trying to get out. And that's actually happened to me before. It's the scariest thing in the world. You wonder, is this going to be it? Is someone going to find me in my garage with a bar, you know, choking me? And then the worst is these 2 leg press clips.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
I showed one of these to a whole bunch of my clients where the lady is sitting in it, and of course she's skinny, and of course her knees hyperextend, and the thing folds her legs completely inverted backwards.
Yeah.
It's grotesque. If you want to Google this shit and watch it, you're going to get sick. It's gross.
It's so bad. It's the most. That's where you actually want to throw up. Like the 2 leg press ones where
that's the worst. The worst.
And you're like, that's like a. How are they going to surgically repair that? And then
never the same.
Yeah.
No.
And then I show Olympic lifts, all these Olympic lifting disasters. And then I show a hip thrust, and I go, and I have 900 pounds on the bar. That's too much for me. I can't do it. I come up 6 inches off the ground, or like 8 inches or whatever, and then I can't get it, and then I set the weight back down. And then I go, that's what happens when you go too heavy in a hip thrust. So you be the judge. And I'm like, the hip thrust is safer than any squat, than any deadlift, than any single leg exercise where you can lose your balance, than any leg press, than any Olympic lift. So don't make stuff up and say it's dangerous. That's just anyone who says that. I look at what their motives are. Why would you bash? And they don't bash any other exercise. It's only the hip thrust. And what I concluded is, anytime you hear someone bash the hip thrust, it's purely jealousy. It's all jealousy. It's just a dude who's so jealous that someone else thought up an exercise that got popular.
Well, it's a lot of the old school bodybuilding community. I remember there's like a bunch of Brazilian coaches were all criticizing your approach too, and they've got a different. They're injecting asses down there for the most part. I think it's a whole different approach of building ass, but it makes me think of like what Lane Norton dealt with flexible dieting. Is he's really pushing that to get that out there, and you're getting pushback from the industry establishment that have written books on built careers around this philosophy and ideology, and you're coming along and completely just rewriting it. So it's in a sense attacking their identity as a coach, and some of them,
the bodybuilding, the powerlifters, and it's funny because
powerlifters hated you.
What'd you say?
I said powerlifters hated you for a while.
Oh my God, for a while I was, because I started giving. And here's what's funny: when powerlifters started hating me, I competed in 3 contests. I mean, I pulled 601 in competition. I pulled 620 pounds on my own. But you know, I'm 6'4". I'm not like,
yeah.
I never thought I'd be straight. This is why I think people can. I feel like I never had an ego. Like I never thought I didn't grow up strong and athletic. So, but when me and my friends started lifting weights, I could not bench the barbell, and my friends were actually amazed. They're like, "Wait, what do you're doing something wrong?" And I just couldn't. I'm like, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not strong enough." They're like, "This isn't possible." I couldn't lift the bar off my chest. I got stapled by the barbell. I was the weakest, skinniest guy. I had no muscle. My grandma would go like this and put her hand around my arm, and she'd shake her head. That was until I was like 16. Like I had no muscle, and I was so skinny and so weak. So I never thought I'd ever amount to anything. So the fact that I'm actually semi-strong now, I'm very pleased with how things turned out. And so I don't have this ego, and I'm proud of my powerlifting days. Like I never amounted to much, but I got in there and did it. And that you should be respected by that. The fact that powerlifters would bash me because I can't squat a lot, bench a lot, is so pathetic. They never act like that at an actual meet. It's online jealousy. It's jealousy because if they saw me at a meet and they didn't know who I was, they'd be like, "Good for you, bro. Good to have you in here. You know, hope to see you around." Everyone's supportive at the actual meet, but it's online. It's like these grown men turning into little babies. And so I started promoting powerlifting and getting bikini competitors to do powerlifting contests. I'm helping your sport, you stupid idiots. I'm helping your sport. And you're jealous. That's why powerlifting will never make it big.
I agree.
It's like you take these guys, and I'm only talking about probably the 10% who are the most vocal.
Yeah.
Because 90% of the powerlifters are cool dudes. They're normal. But a certain percentage, they're bullies. They're the guys who learn to bully people, and the guys who take a shit ton of steroids and turn into egotistical pricks. And you know, those guys, you do a disservice to the sport, because powerlifting is awesome, but some of the characters in there make it suck. And I remember getting bashed by all these guys saying I have no right talking about powerlifting, when it's like I know more. I've published articles about the squat, the deadlift, the bench press. Like I study the biomechanics. I have my PhD. I've measured the muscle activation. I've looked at the forces, the strength curve, you name it. I've studied the hell out of this. It fascinates me. I have every right to talk about powerlifting. And if you have a problem with it, let's debate. No one ever challenged me to debate or accepted a debate. No one ever wanted to talk science. It's like, let's bash this person to my crowd and watch my little circle bash him back. And, oh, do you guys feel good? Do you guys feel good bullying people? Yeah.
Let's take this into one of the other questions that I really wanted to hear your thoughts on. We know that our corner of the industry is kind of small compared to the mainstream. And we know their industry likes to squabble over minor bullshit, while the mainstream audience listens to whichever Kardashian or whatever Gwyneth Paltrow is saying this week on her website. I've mentioned this a few times. I've certainly, last time I saw Sohi in person, she was here. I talked to Sohi, and I think Sohi's a good example of someone who can really break through the mainstream and has that mainstream appeal. You certainly have. You have nearly 500,000 followers on your Instagram. I feel like Mark Fisher's a really great example of someone who can break through. So I've often said I really hope that more of our industry can actually crack through there. But how does our industry need to start thinking to reach and help the masses and stop arguing over bullshit?
Oh, that's a great question, and my answer is going to be surprising. So when you're talking about our community and all the drama and everything, that's actually declined a little bit, because it was Facebook, before the algorithms changed in Facebook. Andrew, how good was our community? Like, we all knew what everyone was doing, and we were all on Facebook every day. We had the community. Like, there's this guy right now who's, he's copying everything I do on Instagram, and he never gives me credit. He's pretty much stolen my identity, and there's no consequences. Like, back in the day on Facebook, he would have been torn apart. I mean, everyone would have just ripped into shreds, and everyone would have known him for being a fraud. And now he like, think about the days of plagiarism. Like, now you have people like who built careers off of taking other people's memes and just putting their own logo on it. That's like identity theft almost. Like, it's worse than plagiarism. There's no consequences anymore. We don't have that tight-knit community. Once the Facebook algorithms change, that's the way our industry policed itself. And also, that's how we kept the marketers under control. Someone come out with a BS article, and a guy like me or Brad Schoenfeld or James Krieger or any of these people could write a response, and you leave the algorithms out of it and let the people decide what's important. And these articles got shared, and that's how I got popular, by Facebook staying out of the way and letting my articles get popular on their own accord. And I would write an article, and I would tackle the controversial topics. I would take on some marketer who was making BS claims, and people loved it. And I'd get, 2,500 likes and 500 shares on those articles. This was 6 years ago. And then the algorithms changed, and now you post an article and it gets like 200 likes and 5 shares. It's not worth my time. I don't even go on Facebook anymore. It's not worth my time. The only way you get traction is if you sponsor posts.
Yeah.
And so how many scientists can sponsor posts? How many of them even know how to do that? How many of them? And so it's so frustrating because Facebook did what they had to do to maximize their revenue. But I was so disappointed over the last several years of Facebook because they, I watched the movie Social Network back in the day, and Mark Zuckerberg had a bigger vision of it being this life changing, world changing thing, and it did for a while. And then they catered to the money, and yeah, and you could say that's their responsibility to maximize the revenue to the shareholders. But it used to be such a beautiful thing, and without that, now it's the marketers that are just have their, it's a field day for marketers.
Yeah.
And they sponsor these posts and they reach millions of people. And so you can say whatever the hell you want. And I'm seeing this rise in sense. Things that you don't look at experiments. You're not looking at studies to prove something. You're looking at what makes sense to the average consumer. And I could sit there and I could fool anyone if I wanted to. With my science knowledge, you guys could too. If you decided I'm going to worship money over everything, do whatever I have to do to get to get people to get the sale. You could say, look at this product, look at this method. This is going to do this X, Y, Z to your physiology. It's going to result in crazy. And so you could do that with anyone. Anyone could do that, and it's just really sad because we can't fight it anymore. So how do we combat the masses? I don't know how to combat the masses. The marketers are back on top. For a while, the scientists had the edge.
Yeah.
But to get that back, that's the way we can fix this situation. Is we have to have a policing system where our stuff gets as popular as the marketer's stuff, even if they're sponsoring ads. Our stuff's good. The people who take the time to combat these marketers and speak the truth, they are actually can write an article and it can go viral like their stuff. That used to be the case.
Well, no, I don't know what else I could add to that. I really do feel that there are certain people who have the appeal and they're great in front of others, that getting you guys, and you're certainly one of them who's done well with it, in front of more people in different mediums, and hopefully the good quality content information gets in front of an everyday audience, and it just simply has more of an appeal than a lot of this like marketed stuff. So I'm seeing people do well with it. A lot of the names I've mentioned, Jordan Syatt's another really good example of someone who's done well with that. And again, combating people who have 10 million followers on Instagram isn't easy, but
well, and they play the game. It's almost like, and we talked about this with Spencer, it's some of these marketers, we'll call them, or people who put in the money or the sales tactics, you almost have to stoop down their level, and none of us are willing to do it because we like what we do too much to like want to do that shit, because we just like lifting or we like training or we like whatever the fuck we're into, and we're not into marketing that much. It almost sucks because no one wants to do all that shit. Like, it feels so horrible to try to do their tactics. Like, it's the worst.
I don't even. That's like, I remember talking to all these guys back in the day. They're like, "You do split testing." I'm like, "Split test? You test two newsletters and see which one does better." I'm like, that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Yeah.
I like what you just said. I like lifting. I'm okay writing a blog, but when it gets into that, tell me out. I'm just not going to go that route. I don't do that much to make more money to like basically manipulate my list of newsletter subscribers. It's like, I just don't do it. And for that matter, I don't do affiliate stuff anymore. I remember I did it a few times back in the day, and I always felt sleazy, like, but that's just what I did, and now it's not as popular.
Well, I think it's that part is dying out. Again, and nothing against affiliate marketing, but like there was like that group of people that did it, and it's slowly becoming not a thing. So I'm sure there's just other avenues for people to use, I'm sure, that are more popular, but I am seeing a very huge decline in that because everyone was pushing the same stuff, it seemed like.
No, that's just how it was. And by the way, if you wanted to get popular back in the day, you needed to be in the circle. And so these guys would come out with a product every year, and you expected to promote it, and it was just so silly, but that's what we all did back then. But I always hated it. I'm so glad I don't have to do that anymore. Now when people tell me, hey, dude, I'm coming out with a product.
Like, no.
You want to be an affiliate? I'm always like, sorry, I don't do any affiliate stuff anymore. It's funny because I even had someone just emailed me asking me if I wanted their product, and I said, sure, go ahead and send me one. And if they would have sent me one, I would have promoted it on my Instagram. But they said, okay, you have to come to LA and do a 2-hour educational thing. Give you one, but you have to promise you're going to post about it. Like, do they even understand how busy I am and how much you would have to, first of all, I wouldn't do that for any fee. If you said, Fred, I'll give you $1 million to promote something you don't like on this, I wouldn't even think about it. Would not even think about it. And I always see people that do the product, like, what do you call it? Like the product placement stuff.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of the people in our industry, they'll do a selfie with like this little selfie corner. I don't do that stuff. Never would, but maybe if I was shredded year round, I would have people approaching me. But I'm like, man, what is a post worth to you? So I had this company send me this machine that I was excited about. It's got a lot of research to support it. In fact, I read all the research, and I even talked about it in a seminar. And they sent me one, and it worked well. I liked it. In fact, it works a little too well. I hurt my knee doing it because it works so well. It's like so hard reversing out of the bottom of a squat, but it's $6,000, and it should be $500 or maybe $800. And I just kept picturing my followers going, Bret, I just picture like one post after another. Bret, I look up to you, and I went and checked out this product that you recommended, and it's $6,000. I'd rather have a car. Like, why did you promote this? It's so expensive. So I just told the people I can't do it. I'm going to send it back. And I shipped it back to them. I just couldn't do it. And all I had to do was, make a post. I got it for free, but it's just not worth it to me. And in the end, people can tell if you're always, always pressuring them. It's like that friend that's manipulative, always makes you get a bad sense of what's going on. You eventually kick that friend to the curb,
That speaks to integrity. And Dean, I think that ties in really well with your next question you're going to ask.
Well, it kind of goes back to when we were in Kansas City. I think when you spoke, you kind of referred to avoiding using language that describes people as damaged or dysfunctional or broken. Would you elaborate on this, especially for like a lot of the trainers and just general fitness buffs that like want to learn about this shit? Why do you think like that in terms of how you describe language to people and using it in your training?
So I realized this is such, I started writing about this like 3 years ago. And then when blogging was still popular, and then I tried again 2 years ago, and then last year, and then I spoke about it in Fitness Summit. Was the first time I ever talked about it. And now I've given that same talk a few times. And I always have people come up to me afterwards going, man, that was mind blowing. I need to film this talk and put it out there for people to listen to. It's probably the most important thing in my career right now that I'm not doing. And I'm so passionate about this. That's why I could never finish a blog on it. I'm too passionate about it. I can't synthesize all my thoughts into one. But interestingly, just over the last few years, I've seen journal articles emerge saying words matter, physical therapy, physical therapists and stuff, because this is so important and it's global. This needs to be a message that the strength coaches need to take the reins back. Basically, you look at, and I've got a lot of followers that are physical therapists, chiropractors, athletic trainers, manual therapists, people involved in rehabilitation. And I don't want to offend them. I don't want to turn them off. But the ones that follow me, they're usually into science. They're not the people I'm talking about. But there's a lot of shoddy science out there, a lot of pseudoscience out there with all of these modalities. Think about this. Andrew, your back's hurting. All right? Now, Dean, How many times over the last decade have you tweaked your back lifting?
20.
20.
I stopped counting. Stop counting.
I think I've done it once. I'm pretty resilient for a 40-year-old built like I am.
I'm an idiot, so
I'm reasonably indestructible. Guido, on the other hand, football.
My early 20s was just full of ridiculousness. So.
Well, I do. I mean, if you're a serious lifter, a couple times a year you're going to tweak it, and it's just the way the cookie crumbles. And so, that was a bad analogy for what I'm going to use. You don't want to think of a cookie crumbling, but anyway, you know what it boils down to? 3 things: your form, your program design, and and I want to preface this by saying I read that my first journal article I ever published was To Crunch or Not to Crunch. I read 400 journal articles on disc biomechanics and physiology, and I've stayed on top of the research since then. This was like 8 years ago, so I know what I'm talking about with spinal biomechanics. But like, there's more to it than just. All right, you hurt yourself in the gym. It's your form, it's your program design. Let's say you decide I'm going to start deadlifting heavy 3 days a week. You're going to hurt yourself. Like not most people can't tolerate that, especially if you're PRing and going up. You're inevitably going to snap. You look at all the popular powerlifting programs, they always involve more squatting volume and frequency than deadlifting. We've just figured that out along the way. So a lot of times it's just program design, form, and mainly the psychology of these lifts. Andrew, have you ever gone into the gym going, oh my God, I am dead set on setting a seated row PR today?
Not particularly.
He's a bad example. He doesn't give a fuck.
And Dean, have you ever been like, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to set a PR on concentration curls and rope tricep extensions. I can feel it. I got it today.
No, I haven't.
No one does that.
No.
The only lifts you do that for are squats and deadlifts and bench. And so the lifts you care about the most, especially when you're like, I can feel it. I did everything right. I ate big this weekend. I rested up. I slept a lot. I'm going to go for something big today. I'm going to go for 315 for 10 reps, or I'm going to go for 405 for 5 or whatever. I'm going to try and hit 515. And then you don't have it that day. You have those days where you did everything right and you don't have it. You also have days where you did everything wrong and you set a PR. It's just the body's weird. But it's one of those days where you have it in your mind, you want to set a PR. You warm up, you're like, oh shit, 405 feels heavy. But you keep at it and you lie to yourself and you go for it anyway. And a lot of times you can get it by just brute force. You're just like, I'm going to get this lift, and you let your form slide a little bit and you just muscle it up. You didn't get a real PR. It's a brute force PR. You're really not stronger. You just let your form slide and you just didn't give a shit. And you got it. And then the next week comes around. You try that again, you're going to snap something up. And so a lot of times it's our stubbornness. And that's what I like about bodybuilders. Bodybuilders, the weight is secondary. They're going for the feel. They're feeling the tension in the muscles. They're trying to, they use the mind-muscle connection more. They're, if they don't have it one particular day, they'll lighten the load, but they'll still get a good workout. So, and I do love powerlifting, but if you're a bodybuilder, you can use powerlifting techniques, but you can't build your best physique training like a powerlifter. Okay, that being said, so you go to a chiropractor, a manual therapist, a physical therapist, you say, I tweak my back. No one ever says, okay, what's your training program like? They don't know enough about it. They can't go, oh, you were deadlifting twice a week and squatting twice a week and doing strongman training, and you were also trying to do this. Look, I just analyzed your program, and you're just not recovering enough. I want you to take 2 weeks off of anything involving your back, no squatting, no deadlifting, no this. You're going to do single leg exercise only and some posterior chain training for high reps, and your back's going to, and then after 2 weeks, I want you doing this instead. No one has ever done that. Instead, what they do is, they try to find some dysfunction. And what is dysfunction? They try and find some dysfunction. They go, okay, and if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you have your hammer and you're looking for a nail. So they'll look at you, Andrew, and they'll go, look at you. Let me test you. Let me test your flexibility in all your different directions or your mobility. Let me look at the development of these muscles. Let me look at your movement patterns when you do this. And someone's going to find something. They're going to go, oh, you have anterior pelvic tilt, or you have a leg length discrepancy here, or you have weak glute, your glutes don't activate, you have a weak core. They say all these things. And I don't think anyone understands what an epidemic this is. We have like 200 people coming into the Glute Lab month in and month out. I also have thousands of people online that I'm interacting with my training programs and my program design and my Booty by Bret, and just interacting. Every single person comes to you saying, just letting you know, just warning you, my didn't activate. Or I'm just warning you, I have a weak core. Or my multifidus doesn't fire. I have a leg length discrepancy. I have pelvic torsion. I have this is out of whack. I have a herniated disc. I have a disc that's out of place. I have my SI joint out of place. And you're like, huh, who told you this? How did this person determine you have a weak core? He could just tell. Did he give you any core tests? Did he give you a side plank and a pal-out press and a front plank? Did he have you try any straight leg sit-ups or hanging leg raises? No, he could just tell. You can't just tell. You have to put them through a series of tests. Nobody can just tell. How did he tell that your glutes don't activate? Oh, he could just tell. Did he palpate you during a series of exercises? No, he just knows they don't turn on. He doesn't know shit. He's making it up. And they know that you could tell anyone this and they'll believe it. I could take any of my clients and go, hey, I'm just letting you know, you have gluteomnesia. And they'd all believe it. And they don't have gluteomnesia. It's just that they don't lift and they're sedentary and they're weak. They're weakened and atrophied. Their glutes work just fine. You just have to, you wake them up and you strengthen them through strength training. All they need is strength and conditioning. And to start off low level and progress up, they're not dysfunctional. They don't, you could just take any beginner and tell him he's all dysfunctional. They're not. And this is my whole point is words matter. And when you tell someone this influences their ability to develop pain later on. So if you have it in your head, I have weak glutes, or I have small glutes, or I have anterior pelvic tilt, I have this, I have that, then you can play, it's called a nocebo effect. I take a year or 2 or 3 down the road, but it's always in the back of your mind, and all of a sudden you can manifest that back pain. And I think a lot of pain, the studies on tissue damage and pain do not show high correlations. It's a lot of it is what our brain makes sense of it all based on its beliefs and thoughts and history and things like that.
It's like Inception. It's like the movie. Yeah. It's you like movies. It's like Inception.
Well, to further your point, Dean, you've heard about phantom limb pain. So someone gets their arm chopped off or amputated, and they have pain in their hand. They don't even have a hand. So that proves you don't even need a body to experience pain. And on the converse, someone can get shot and not even know it if during the right circumstances. So it just goes to show you, a lot of it is our relationship, our beliefs about things. And so what I do, and my approach, I think of myself as, look, I always say this, I am a strength and conditioning coach. I strengthen people's minds, bodies, and spirits. I have no time for labeling people. That doesn't serve my good, my prerogative. My goal is to get you mentally strong, physically strong, emotionally strong, and labeling you has no time and place. There's no time and place for labeling people like that. So, because labels stick. So if they say to me, Bret, I have anterior pelvic tilt, I always look at them and I go, I don't know. You look pretty normal to me. I don't know how to measure it. Do I get like what 2 markers do I use? And do I have like a goniometer? Am I supposed to, but let's say you have 7 degrees of anterior pelvic tilt. That's normal. But either way, let's say you have some anterior pelvic tilt. So does Usain Bolt. Have you ever seen that guy? He's the fastest guy in the world. He has massive lumbar extension, anterior pelvic tilt. Sprinters tend to have anterior pelvic tilt, and they're the fastest people in the world. So I kind of wish I had some anterior pelvic tilt. And then they're like, is this guy an idiot? Or he's not going to
like, I know this guy.
He's not going to let any excuses.
There's all kinds of examples in pro sports of people who would end up being dysfunctional, if you want to qualify it that way.
LeBron James.
And his player's forearm. right? They're over their main forearm. You look at any baseball pitcher's shoulder, right? There's deformational changes that happen at a young age that is just how they adapt to actually throw harder fastballs. There's tons of these examples, just like your sprinter one.
And what you're saying is that's functional for them. In fact, I would argue you shouldn't go take the 50 swings right-handed and then take 50 swings left-handed. You're not going to maximize your coordination with your right-handed swing. You should have, if you play sports, you can and will have asymmetry. So people say, I feel one glute working more than the other, and I say, well, that's normal. You spent your whole life jumping off one leg and kicking with one leg. You kick with your right leg and jumped and planted off your left, so your left hip extensor gets stronger from that position, your right hip flexor. That's normal. Quit thinking that that's a weird, that you're dysfunctional, and start thinking that's a normal functional adaptation to living. So I don't let them have any excuses, and they quickly learn that I'm not going to allow for it. Now, I will figure out the best exercises for them and the best variations and the best methods, and I will keep getting them stronger and stronger and stronger, and they'll have no nocebo effects along the way. They'll have a healthy relationship with their bodies and their confidence and their strength, and they will find things they're really good at. And when they say, I struggle with squatting, I'll go, well, yeah, look at you. You're tall, or you have like freakishly long legs and this short torso. Of course you're going to be, but I'll tell the women, like, yeah, my girls who are squatting a ton would kill to have your legs, so don't worry about it. Or like, I'll just try to make light of the situation, make them feel good inside, and then you just keep complimenting them. You start them off a little too light with a little too easy of a variation, and they go, and they're like, wow, I'm sorry, I started you off too easy. I didn't realize you were more advanced than I thought. Wow, you're really good at this. You're strong. And you compliment them. They go home and they're bragging to their spouse. They're like, hey, what's up? Guess who has glutes of steel? And they tell their spouse, and they're confident. They form a good relationship with the gym and with personal training, resistance training. You get them to get their butts in the gym on their days off when you're not training them. You get them to have the confidence. You compliment their form. You compliment their effort. And instead of the complete opposite model as this debilitating labeling model, you're actually not labeling them, and you're just empowering. It's like the debilitating model versus the empowering model. So you will never hear me tell someone they have, scapular dysfunction or anterior pelvic tilt or weak core or weak glute or like gluteal amnesia or anything like that. I just don't go there. In 20 years of personal training, 22 years, I have never said that to a single client. I just don't go there, and it's not hurting me in my results. If anything, it helps me. So I don't know where along the way every strength coach wanted to be a physical therapist and every physical therapist wanted to be a strength coach. Let them do their job. Let us do our job. But you should learn from us. We fix people better than you do if you're labeling people. And if you're labeling them because you think you need them to think negatively about themselves for them to come back, then you're doing a disservice to your profession. Because I can tell you that a lot of these people, if you go to a physical therapist, he's going to give you corrective exercise. You can have the same problem. When you go to 5 specialists, the physical therapist will give you corrective exercise. The chiropractor will give you adjustments. The manual therapist will tell you have tight muscles and stretch you and massage you. It goes on and on and on. The person who's a specialist in cupping or scraping or using these implements or instruments, and this who's certified this laser thing is going to use that, and they're all going to tell you the same thing. This is the secret. This is the key to getting you well. Well, you know what else works really well? Not using any of that stuff. Just telling them what you're going through is normal. We're going to get you through it. Time heals the wounds. We're going to get you to lay off of this activity and focus on the things you can do pain-free instead. Use a graded approach and get you to do things a little bit differently. So you get that, you eliminate the sensitization to the pain, and then your body becomes to accept it. Okay, movement is good. I can go through this stuff. And then you build the confidence, and it all works hand in hand, and all of a sudden you've got a strong, resilient person that understands a couple times a year. It's normal to have imbalances. Every body is unique. I'm going to have strong muscles and weaker muscles, and strong lifts and weaker lifts. That's normal. we're all normal under this bell curve, and you're not labeling, you're not debilitating them, you're empowering them, you're giving them confidence, and it's just a much better approach. I've never used that model my entire career, and I'm seeing a lot of success. I think a lot of people need to get away from trying to razzle and dazzle their clients by labeling them and telling them some prognosis that's a lot of times doesn't even exist, or you're flat out wrong.
Yeah, they're just
I
idiots.
love this because your presentation, it really struck me. It's not that I ever caught myself use that kind of language consistently, but it certainly made me think about it in a whole new light. And I'm always very careful to avoid language that robs someone of their power and makes them feel like there's something wrong with them.
Or
you
not
just
even
empower someone and you're negatively affecting them. I believe in empowering people. So that ties in with the last question we wanted to ask before I run out of time. But you posted 2 separate quotes on your Instagram. So the first one is, quote, "What builds muscle best in a surplus maintains muscle best in a deficit." And then strength training is fat loss training. Why is our industry fuck this shit up so much and go 2 different approaches to these things? Explain this stuff.
Andrew, I am convinced I'll spend the rest of my career trying to educate people on this and then not succeeding.
Yeah, you won't win that.
I've been at this for probably 8 straight years trying to get this message across that the only thing that needs to change is your diet. Well, it depends on. So I have a girl competing in 2 days. She's 4'11". She weighs 96 pounds. She weighed 96 when she came to me. All the popular bodybuilding coaches would have given her cardio and starved her and gotten her shredded. I said, I think 96 pounds is a good weight for you. Let's just do progressive overload into your competition. She never dieted, never did cardio, and she looks amazing. She's going to compete in 2 days. She looks incredible. She never dieted, never did cardio. She did progressive overload. She just PR'd. She was who I trained right before this podcast, and I trained her yesterday. She set a PR on peak week. This is peak week. She PR'd on military press, chin-ups, hip thrusts, Nordic ham curls. She PR'd on everything this week, and she's going into it with a confidence, and she'll crush it. And no one even understands that that's a possible approach. You don't have to do cardio and starve yourself. You can recomp, but in general, it matters on how far you let yourself slide. You know, for me, I'm 252 pounds right now, and I've got some serious chunk on me. I have to get, if I want to get lean, I get down 5 pounds. I got to lose 27 pounds. Okay, I don't have to start doing high reps and short rest periods and circuits and high intensity interval training, because that gets me away from strength training and putting tension on the muscles. You don't have to change your training at all. Now, I will say, like the week before, if I'm working with actual bodybuilders and bikini competitors and stuff who have to pose on stage, the week before the competition, I'm not going to go. I will go higher reps, and because you don't want them hurting this. The worst thing would be to have to be on stage injured and you're trying to flex your muscles and something hurts. But in general, you don't have to change the methods, because if you're training to build muscle and using these techniques for hypertrophy, these are the same techniques that are going to cause you to preserve muscle while you're dieting down. I mean, hypertrophy training, it should be hypertrophy training is also anti-catabolic training, you know? And so the primary driver of muscle hypertrophy is tension on the muscles. So you can't get away from that. And so you can say, will they burn a little more calories if they do the higher reps and the short rest periods and train? And that way of training is so much harder, by the way. And how many additional calories do you end up burning? 100? You know, is it 100 extra calories? You could have addressed that in your diet. And you just had, you know, now it may come into play if you got someone who's under 1,000 calories a day, a female competitor who's, you know, 100 pounds, 110 pounds or something, and she's been doing it for a while. Then maybe you add in, but you could just add in cardio. You don't have to. You don't have to do these crazy strength training methods. And a lot of times, those methods that people are employing do more harm than good. Because if they would have just done straight up, you know, 3 sets of 8 or whatever, and tried to say, okay, when you diet down, your chin-ups will go up. You know, you'll set PRs on chin-ups, push-ups, body weight stuff, you know. Your Nordic ham curls will become amazing. You will lower yourself all the way to the ground, but your absolute strength will diminish, like on bench press, squats, deadlifts, military press. That's bound to happen, but you strive to retain as much as possible of it. And if you did the 3 sets of 8 or whatever, you would, and you said, okay, I'm going to try for this. Last week I got this, I'm going to try and tie that, but I've lost a pound. So that's still progressive overload. It's more relative strength. Instead, they'll abandon the 3 sets of 8 and go, instead of doing military press, I'm going to do this delt circuit of lateral raise, front raise, rear delt blaster, 3 sets of 20 in each direction with no rest, and they get this crazy burn, but they didn't necessarily, you let your strength go through out the window, and you're going to lose some muscle mass. And so the second part of that quote was, strength training is fat loss training. And I always say it like this. It's the most eloquent way I can explain it. You got 2 twins. They both weigh they both weigh 200 pounds. One of them does cardio his whole life. The other lifts weight his whole life. Who's going to be leaner? The guy who lifts. He's going to have way more muscle and way less fat. The cardio can help you get lean. A lot of it, I think, helps through appetite suppressant, not because it doesn't build your muscle mass. It only helps you burn calories, and you could have done that with diet alone. But is it healthy to do cardio? Sure, but it's also healthy to lift weights. They're both good for your heart, and I just think that people put way too much. You see the biggest problem. I work with so many competitors right now, probably 100 of them. A lot of them aren't aficionados of strength training. They're not true bodybuilders. Back in the day, the bodybuilders had their off season and their in season. They're bulking and they're cutting. They're always going for strength gains and trying to be stronger and fitter. They don't just say, these 6 months I'm just going to get fat and not lift much. A lot of the competitors, it's like the only time they train hard is when they're competing for a competition. And then the second their competition's over, they put on 15 pounds the next week. And then they just keep gaining, and they don't even lift. They don't show up to the gym. They don't lift hard. And then they think it's like just, train hard 3 months out of the year. That's not the way it works if you want to keep seeing improvements. But if you don't even bulk and cut, let's say I just stayed right at 230 pounds, just kept trying to get stronger, a little bit stronger, a little bit fitter every year, you would get leaner each year. That's what most of my clients, before I ever started working with competitors, I just worked with regular people. They'd recomp. I'd get a woman in there. She'd weigh 130 pounds. The whole year, she weighs 130. I just tell her, if they have a pretty healthy diet, I just say, keep eating the same way. I make sure they're getting at least 0.8 grams a pound, 0.8 grams per pound of body weight per day. And then the rest is not too big of a deal. They eat the same way. They get way stronger throughout the year. They still weigh 130 at the end of the year. And they say to me, Bret, check this out. I just put on my jeans from last year. Oh, my God. And there's like a 4-inch gap in the waist because they have reshifted their mass around. And they lost weight off the problem areas. They gained weight in the right areas. They look so different. They're way leaner. They're way curvier in all the right places. And they never changed weight. They never dieted. They never did cardio. They just strength trained. And their results are amazing.
We screw up shit as young new trainers in the industry. There's plenty of things I've learned over the years, but that's one of the things I felt good about is I always seemed to have an understanding that strength training was fat loss training. And so I've never done something different, circuit based or anything along those lines for fat loss. I've always focused on strength. So it's a point of pride to say, at least I got that part right early on. It's something I've always done. I am running short on time. I know you two have tons of time. But I wanted to make sure that for any of our listeners who haven't been following you, haven't gotten into any of your work, that they can find you easily, both your website and your social media. So where can they get you?
So I mainly just Instagram now. Instagram.com/Bret Contreras 1. If you can't remember my name, Bret Contreras, you could just type in the glute guy onto Google and you'll find my stuff. I do want to start blogging more again. But I have a newsletter that I only send out like once every month. I don't spam people. It's just the new stuff I'm doing. And yeah, that's generally where to find me.
You got good stories.
I do Instagram well. I'm on my story a lot, and I try to show my life and things like that. So
It's fairly humorous.
Really fun. So I always like to say this. So obviously, with our listeners, we have an existing base of core listeners, and I'm really hopeful that most of them know who you are already. You're more high profile than virtually any of our other guests we've ever had.
Whoa, you just cut everyone down, man.
Well,
they need to accept this, you know.
Yeah, you just
they have to do.
Brett's you're like a B list now. You're not an A, but like you're definitely not a C or D.
If you haven't followed Brett, his Instagram is a blast. It's fun. We described it earlier. And if you're someone who's been following Brett for a while and found us, this is the first episode you've listened to. We've been working really hard on creating something fun, original, different kind of questions. We've mentioned we've had Soheili, we've had Dr. Spencer Nadolsky a couple of times, we've had Dr. Mike Isertel. You mentioned James Krieger. He's done a couple of hours. We've gotten a lot of really cool people. We've got Nick Tuminello scheduled for a couple of weeks from now, and then Danny Sugar. She's one of the editors for T-Nation. She's coming next week. So we take pride in bringing on some of the industry's absolute best and making it a really fun experience for them. So check out some of our other stuff if you really like it. You know, a 5-star review or a share would do us wonders, and that way we can reach more people. Brett, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us. I really appreciate this, brother. It's great
You're
to talk.
very welcome. And just know that whenever I do podcasts, I always send out some people, you do a podcast with them and they don't even promote it. And you're like, what the hell? This isn't a one-way street. So I will send this out to I'll post it on my Instagram story. I will send it out to my newsletter, and I wish you guys the best because this was a great.
You got to try to beat Sohi's record. Sohi's been her episode is
9,000
all-time best at 9,000 downloads.
Really?
Yeah.
So
she's much prettier than you, though. So like that makes all.
Paulie Baxter holds the second highest total. Spencer's way up there. He was really trying to catch them, but he didn't quite get there.
I wonder why.
We're gonna.
His V-neck wasn't deep enough.
And I'm thinking about a graphic idea. Of course, you mentioned Inception, so I'm almost thinking of slapping your face on Leo DiCaprio. But this whole thing has been just pure scorched earth of like intensity from you. So I'm almost picturing like McConaughey and Christian Bale, and I remember the movie Raid of Fire. So we'll come up with something for you. So we'll have a fun graphic for Instagram.
Fuck,
dude, thank you so much.
I
have
want
to run. You guys can chat.
But great questions. I thank you guys for doing your homework and answering or asking the good questions.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, my friend. We'll be putting this one out in a week, so it'll be released Thursday next week. That's our timetable for it. So thanks so much. Great talking to you. Hopefully I'll see you again at a conference in the not-too-distant future. And Guido, you and I can record an intro after.
Yeah.
But I got to go for now. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Shut up and sit down.